you for the kind words. Thank you, Brochus, for sponsoring. I had at a shir at Jaili one time, a man came in with a yarmulke with the Chicago Cubs on his emblem on it. And I said, look, I'm in Los Angeles, I have to acknowledge the Dodgers. So if you came with the Dodgers thing, I have to give honor to the city. But if it's any other team, it has to be the Yankees. So being a New Yorker, so I appreciate the analogy to this player in the Dodgers, but, in any event, the next week they came with the yarmulke with the Yankee emblem on it, So it's in my office, you can come see it if you'd like. A little too small, my pants don't fit under it, but other than that, okay. But it was a nice gesture in any event. But thank you for the kind words. The Sfasemis asks a very powerful question. Sfasemis asks, Chazal tell us, our sages teach us that Kol dar she'ein nivne b'yamav kilu nechra b'yamav. In every generation that the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, is not rebuilt, it's as if it's destroyed. And this is very difficult to understand. We've had generations of great people, Rashi, the Rambam, the Baal Shem Tov, the Gra. It wasn't rebuilt in their generation, so do we look at it that they were part of the generation that it was destroyed? And you could ask it as a second question, and we're the ones that are supposed to build it? A little bit daunting of a task. So how does that work? And the Sfasemis says something very beautiful. That it's a cumulative effect. That every generation that contributes to the building of the Beis Hamikdash, of the temple, they're part of the rebuilding of it. And God forbid, if the generation doesn't contribute, then it's as if they're part of the destruction. So it's really, to put it in simple words, are we part of the problem or part of the solution? And he says that all of the light of service that the Jewish people do to be worthy of redemption adds up until the final light of the final redemption. And this is the merit of each generation done properly to be able to achieve this. And he adds something very beautifully, and I'm going to read it in Hebrew, because I think the words are so beautiful, and I'll translate. B'chol adam b'frat gamkein, and every individual person as well. Tzarech leida shekol ma'asav hein siyua lebinyan Beis Hamikdash. Everybody needs to know that their individual acts also add and are part of the binyan, the construction of the temple. And every person, when they accept upon themselves the yoke of heaven, that helps build it. Something like what the Morris, teach. Every bit you do, you build another brick. It really is a similar idea. And the Sfasemis is teaching us a very powerful lesson. So we don't have to be on the level of Rashi or the Rambam or the Baal Shem Tov or the Gra to build the temple. We just have to add our part in our which way that we can, what we can add to it. And it's a little relief. And on the other hand, it's a real responsibility. Because we can't get away with, oh, well, I'm not Rashi, not the Rambam, so, hey, I'm just a regular old guy, so forget it. No, we each have our own way in which we can contribute. And that's what Hashem wants from us. Hashem would like each and every one of us to do our part in being able to add a little bit more light into this world. So I'd like to talk about the three most important relationships in our lives. Anyone have an idea what they might be? Sorry? I hear mumbles. I'm hearing a garbage can and more truck more than anybody else. What? Hashem is one, okay? Ourselves. Sorry?
Spouses or family?
Spouses or family. Anybody else? We'll take a few more.
Ready.
Sorry, Rabbi? Okay.
Parents?
Parents? I'm already at 5. Okay.
Children.
Children? Okay. Well, I hear 7.
Our fellow man?
Fellow man. Okay. So, though the answers that you gave are all correct, depending on the person's circumstances, they may not have, maybe their parents aren't alive anymore, in my case. My parents are blessed and they aren't alive anymore, so does that mean that I'm missing one of the 3? So the 3 that we're talking about, and that we're going to talk about, are going to be relevant to everybody, regardless of age or time or anything. So, I'd like to begin with a story about Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence. There was a non-Jewish fellow who was not religious, who came to a Jewish fellow, his friend, who was also not religious, and asked him, what's the essence of Judaism? I don't know. So let's find out. They start walking in the Jewish neighborhood, non-Jewish neighborhood. That didn't get very far. They came to a Jewish neighborhood and said, you know, what's the essence of Judaism? And people were shrugging. One person actually tells them, go to Rabbi Czapnick. Like that. They didn't know me. And they kept on asking. They didn't get satisfactory answers. And they finally decided we have to try a new tack. We have to go over to somebody and ask if there's a synagogue that we can go to. So they find somebody walking on the street and they say, is there a synagogue that we could come to? And it happened to be my son that they bumped into. And my son said, sure, come with me. And he brought him to the jail. And it was a yomtiv. We had a guest lecturer that I think used to speak here on Tisha, Rabbi Avrohom from Mexico. And Rabbi Miller was speaking between Mincha and Lager. He didn't know the story at all. And he said of a story that when he was in Mexico, he was in a taxi and driving along, and the taxi pulls up to the side of the road and puts the car into park. And he says, the taxi driver turns around, what's the essence of Judaism? The exact question that those people in the back of the shul had. And his answer to them was the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, the Mishnah, the oral tradition of ethics of our fathers, that says, Al Shleisha Dvarim Ha'olam Oimei, the world stands on 3 things, Al HaTorah, Al Avodah, Al Gvul. On the study of Torah, on the service of the Almighty, and on acts of loving power. And he elaborated on that. And they got their answer, which was nice. The Jewish fellow actually came around for a while and then vanished from the face of the earth. I don't know what happened. I wish I could tell you a nice end of Kira story, but that isn't what happened. But at least I don't know that, but that's what happened. So I'd like to just elaborate on this a little bit and ask the boys to give out some sheets. Shall we pass it around? So why are these 3 so important? Well, first of all, they correspond to the Avos, to the patriarch Avrohom, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avrohom represents the concept of chesed, of gemilas chasadim, of loving kindness, of loving home, taught people. Yitzchak is avodah, service. He himself was a carbon, was ready to be a carbon. And Yaakov was Torah, Yoshev Avrohom sitting in the tent. So we see that these three important fundamentals of what the world stands on are also the fundamentals of where we come from the Avos. They're also the three most important relationships. The concept of Gemilas Chasadim is obvious. That's man and fellow man. Avodah service is a relationship with the Almighty. And Torah is a relationship with ourselves. So the three primary relationships are the Almighty, each other, and ourselves. And again, this applies to everybody, regardless of age, size, gender. Doesn't make a difference. Country of origin, all doesn't make a difference. These three are that. Now, what's interesting is, imagine you're going on a trip. Well, if you go on a trip, you need a few things before you begin the trip. You need to make sure you know where you're going. That represents Hashem. He gives us the direction. When you extra sheet, you can pass them. Can I drive safely? Also important. Got to worry about others. And am I fit to drive? Am I in a state of enough drinking the wrong things or not drinking enough? Right? Can I drive? So these are the three things, again, ourselves, others, and Hashem. These also correspond to the three cardinal sins, the three averos that we're restricted from doing even if on the pain of death. Avodah Zarah, idol worship, is the fundamental sin against Hashem. Gilui Arayos, sexual immorality, is the fundamental sin against ourselves. And murder is a fundamental sin against other people. So these three become a very neat package for us to understand the fundamentals of Judaism and the three most important relationships that we need to work on. So let's take a look at looking at ourselves first. Who am I? Well, when we look into the mirror, we see something different than maybe some of the pictures we have from our youth. There was a time I actually had black hair on my forehead. There was a time. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. My excuse is that grass doesn't grow on busy streets. I use my brain, and that's why. But who we are really is obviously not what we look like. And the proof of that is, if you look at baby pictures and going throughout, we change. Our looks change. No question about it. I always tell people, invite them to come to our house for Shabbos, and my wife was a great cook. Before I was married, I was 5'1" and slim, and look what happened. But we need to look into the mirror in a different way, the spiritual mirror. We need to look at ourselves and say who we are. And the Baal Moshe says something very fascinating. And when we're looking who we are, we need to know what are our pluses, what are our attributes, what are our positive character traits, and we need to know what our negative character traits are. Of the two, which one would you think is most important? That's a question.
Are we supposed to answer it?
Yeah. If you have an answer, you can answer. If you don't have an answer, you don't have to. Go ahead.
Both.
Both. That's a very Jewish answer.
You
Very
can't have
Jewish.
self-esteem if you don't know what your good aspects are, but you can't grow as a person if you don't know what you need to work on.
Okay, but I need one of the two. The choice wasn't both. I didn't give 3 boxes. There was A, B, and that was it. Not A and B. or yeah,
Negative, so you know what to work on.
okay.
Positive from the examples given, the Akashadim is the positive, Torah is the positive, and Avodah, positive.
Okay.
We're going to see a negative.
So the Valamusa say both, but, you're not don't leave yet. She's already shining, she's all happy. Not yet. You need both. Because if you don't know the negatives, you don't know what to work on. But you're worse off if you don't know the positive. Because if you don't know what you can do, then you'll never be able to do it. So, self-esteem, that's a discussion for another time. Is that real? Is that a new American Michigan? That's a discussion for another time. So we need to look at ourselves and know who we are. And there's a part that we're not going to see in the mirror that's very important. And that is our potential. We're not going to see our potential. Famous story within itself. Many of the great stories of great people, there's a problem with some of these stories. You know, at 5 years old, he knew all of Shabbos. At 12, 13, he was on the Bezdin in Vilna. You know, they're very inspiring for people that are born geniuses. But for the rest of mere mortals, it doesn't do very much. The Netziv was a normal, regular kid, making trouble. That's not that normal. I don't want you to take it easy. But the Netziv really was a regular child and was not into his learning at all. And his parents said, you know, we can't afford to keep on paying the Rebbe, and he's clearly not cut out for learning. Let's get him an apprenticeship to learn a trade. When the Netziv heard this, he was shocked. He realized that, you know, like his behavior really does have consequences that he didn't anticipate. And he said, please give me a chance. Please give me a chance. And another chance. And he took himself and got himself very serious into learning. And he became the Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, Rosh Yeshiva of the Volozhny Yeshiva, author of many works, including the Emek Dover on Chumash. And when he finished his first sefer, I think it was the Emek Dover, he made a huge suda to thank Hashem that he had completed it. And people asked him, why are you making such a suda? It's very nice, but why are you making such a thing? He said, I could have been a very, very nice Jewish man, a tailor or a shoemaker, and I could have worked and maybe had a little shir in the morning, and maybe gone to Rabbi Summers in between Mincha Ma'ariv shir, and it would have been very good, have been a nice fellow, and come up to Shemayim, come up to heaven after 120 years, and Hashem would pull me into a room and says, where's your Emet Dover? Emet Dover, what's that? That's your work on Chumash. Where's your Sefer on Halacha? I was a tailor. I was a shoemaker. What do you mean where my farm were? I wasn't learning. Says to me, your potential was that you could have been that. And you didn't live up to your potential. So our potential is a very important thing. We can't underestimate our potential. And we usually do, by the way. We usually think that we can't do. The flip side of the coin, shared a story last night about 2 Bachrim from Petah Tikva that were visiting the small town of Bnei Brak before the formation of the state. It was during World War II. And they see a man walking with a lantern. And they go and they see it's Rav Kahaneman. And they asked him, Rebbe, excuse me, can we help you? Did you lose something? He says, no, I didn't lose anything, I'm fine. Do you see what I see? On a hilltop in Bnei Brak. He says, well, what do you see? He says, over here, here's the yeshiva. Right on the top of the mountain here with 1,000 students. Across the street is a dormitory with 300 bucks from here, and another dormitory with 300 bucks from here. And right over there is the library and a dining room. You see it? And they're looking at each other saying, it's just a mountain. There's really nothing there. No, you have to see it. It's really there. And you know what they thought? They thought he never lost his mind. He had lost his wife and children in the war. Rommel was, the Desert Fox was bringing the Africa Corps off the top of northern Africa, heading, he was in already close into Egypt, and it was a short trip up to Palestine. The Arabs were already looking at which apartments of the Jews they're going to take over when the Germans come. And the Panovich sees buildings with 1,000 students and dormitories and never. But you know what? He lived a dream. He was 65 years old with his family gone, and you go to Bnei Brak and you go see what he built up. It's called the Panovich Rav because he built up Panovich. And one of these Avrohom years later came and introduced himself, said, I was one of the Avrohom. And the Panovich Rav took him on a tour. And he says, you know why it happened? One man can't do this. It's determination and Hashem. So potential is something beyond. We sell ourselves short all the time. So that's part of what we need to know, that we can do more than we think. And we need to know our positive attributes and our negative attributes. Interestingly enough, by the Akedah, when Avrohom was willing to sacrifice his son, what did the Malach say? Avrohom, Avrohom. He called him twice. Why twice? Because there's two Avrohoms. There's the Avrohom of potential on this world, and there's the actualization of that in Shemayim. Avrohom! The Avrohom on this earth, you match the Avrohom in heaven. It's now the same, because Avrohom has lived his potential. Pirkei Avos tells us something, but before I talk about Pirkei Avos, I want to mention one more thing about the negative. So many of us are thinking, yeah, I know I have all this potential, but I have a problem. I have these negative attributes, and I have these negative circumstances, and that's really in the way. And if not for that, I would really live my potential. I really got what Rabbi Czapnick said. He's almost right. Potential is great, and if I was in a different circumstance, I'd really live my fullest potential. And you know what the problem with that is? Because we're missing the point. The point that we're missing is the Hasidic masters tell us that the negative traits or circumstances that we have, those are where our greatest growth can be. That's the area where we're going to earn our wings, so to speak, to fly in Olam Haba. In other words, it's not in spite of these negative traits that I could earn it. It's because of them. If I work on that, everyone says, what's my purpose in life? Figure out what your positive attributes are and figure out what your negative attributes are, and then look at the negatives and say, what can I do to make it better? Because if I can do that, if I can work on those negative attributes, then that's my purpose. It's interesting, Pirkei Avos says, Ezu Chacham, who is wise, and the answer for that is? Who is wise? I'm sorry? No, wise. One who learns from others. Okay? Who is strong? Goes back to his Yetzirah. Who is rich? Happy with his lot. Who is honored? Honors others. Okay? Now, why didn't the Mishnah give us real live examples? You know, today in education we're into 3D and showing pictures. Wise, but it says Shlomo HaMelech. Strong, Shimshon HaGibar. Rich, you can go back to Shlomo. Why can't I have examples? What's the disadvantage of examples?
You're like, oh, that's good for him, I can't do that.
It's all relative.
It's all, right? Yeah, if you have a rich relative, that helps you know. No, the point is that if, in fact, giving examples, then I get to my old excuse, it's not for me. The mission in Pirkei Avos is telling us what each and every one of us can do. You want to be wise? Learn from everybody. You want to be strong? Work on holding back the Yetzer Hara. You want to be rich? Learn to be happy. You want to be honored? Give honor to others. This anybody can do. Does it make a difference? Your background, your IQ, your financial acumen, anyone can do it. The common denominator is I can change. I can grow. I'm not a victim of my circumstances. I have the power to become these things. Unfortunately, many times we limit ourselves because of our own self-perception, and we limit ourselves sometimes because of how others perceive us. I think they say it in the Czapnick. It's a very interesting insight, and hold on to it for a minute because it sounds a little confusing, and I'll explain it. If I am I, because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I and you are not you. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I and you are you. Okay, let me explain. If my existence is tied to your perception of me, and your existence is tied to my perception of you, then I'm not me and you're not you. If my existence is tied because I drive a fancy car, or I dress a certain way, or even I have a certain job, then I'm not me. Because that means I need everybody else's opinion. You too. If you're you only because of how I'm going to perceive you, then you're not you. Interesting article I read recently about a non-Jewish woman who tried an experiment dressing modestly for a year. She said she was tired of the rat race of always having the nicest new outfits and shoes and makeup and not even be able to go outside without being dressed to the nines. And she learned from Orthodox Jews and from Muslims and from other people this idea of, not worrying so much about the externals. Being neat, but still being modest. And it was liberating for her, she found. And she was shocked that that's not what society pushes. But she realized that it's not about how others perceive us. It's about who we are and how we're supposed to be perceiving ourselves. The great Hasidic master, the Rabbi Tisha, said, when I come up to Shemayim, Hashem is not going to ask me, Tisha, why weren't you doing as much Hafnasas Arachim as Avrohom Avinu? Tisha, why didn't you know as much Torah as Moshe Rabbeinu? Hashem's going to say, Tisha, why weren't you Tisha? Hashem wants us to be the best that we can be, not to compare to anybody else. Powerful story about a Jewish girl whose grandfather was religious, Israeli Jewish girl. Her parents were secular, and occasionally her grandfather would take her to shul with him Friday night. And one day, the little girl came home and said, Abba, I want you to take me to shul Friday night. He said, no. I work hard all week. Friday and Shabbat, I'm a couch potato. The only exercise he got was moving his finger on the remote. That was it. I'm not going to no shul. And as little children have the ability to do, it started nudging. Abba, I want to go. Friday night. Saba takes me, I want to go. Finally, in desperation, father said something I wouldn't recommend. He said, I'm not taking you. Oh, you know what? I'll take you when you learn to stop sucking your thumb. The habit she had, she was a little girl. And you figured that'll keep her busy for at least 5-6 years. And then by then, the Mishigas will pass. She was determined to go to shul. And she asked her mother, Ima, can you stay with me when I go to sleep and hold my hand so I don't suck my thumb? 6 months went by. And she said, Abba, take me to shul. I said, I told you when you... I stopped sucking my thumb. And she had worked on herself, and she did. And that Friday night, Abba took her to shul. And when they came back, they had a Shabbos meal, like they had never had before. The power of this little child who understood her own potential, that even this thing that was her favorite thing, sucking her thumb, there was something more important than that, going to get her out and take her to shul. The hero of the story, obviously he's a little girl, but there was actually another hero of the story. It was the mom. She stayed with her during the 6 months to help her not suck on her thumb while she slept. And when they went to shul finally, she made a real Shabbos, the Suda, and lit Shabbos candles, and got dressed in honor of Shabbos very beautifully. So she's the hidden hero of the story. And it transformed the family. The family now had a different direction because of this ability of this little girl not to be afraid of her own potential. How do I deal with others? How do I judge them? Do I judge them by externals? Do I judge them by the peer group that they're part of? One of the most embarrassing moments I had internally was I was at a lecture and people were coming in, and a person walked in and the person had mismatched clothing, a little slumpy, didn't look put together at all, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, never. This lecture attracts all different types. That was the lecturer. And he opened up his mouth and said pearls of beautiful Torah. So I didn't say anything publicly, so I was only privately embarrassed. Now I'm publicly embarrassed. But then that was only privately embarrassed. Because I had looked at the externals and I made a judgment call. And it was wrong. It was wrong. The peer group, people do this all the time, especially if it's not your peer group. We're very easy to judge other peer groups, because our peer group is perfect, because I'm perfect, and there are people exactly like me are perfect. We're almost perfect, almost close to perfect as me. But the other peer group, oh, those fill in your blank. You know, we have our preconceived biases and notions. Do we understand that we are created, all of us are created with the Tzelem Elokim, in the image of Hashem? And the image of Hashem can take many forms, shapes, colors, sizes, ages, groups. Everybody's still created in the Tzelem Elokim. Chazal tell us, "Havadonas kol ha'adam l'kach zchus." I say to teach us, what does that mean? Anyone know what that means?
Judge others favorably.
I'm sorry?
Judge others favorably.
Judge others favorably. As kol ha'adam, most commentaries say mean everyone. But one of the commentaries say a very beautiful, different interpretation. Havadan, you should judge as kol ha'adam, the entirety of the persons, favorably. Everybody has faults, and everybody has virtues. If you can expand your view a little bit, and look not only at the flaws that the other person has, but look at their virtues. Judge as kol ha'adam, the entirety of the person. then you'll be able to judge them favorably, because you'll be able to see a part of them that you're not focused on. The Rabbi mentioned that I'm a pre-Bonei Rebbe, and I asked the parents to send mitzvah notes. And I have two motivations for sending mitzvah notes. One is because most of the time it makes the kids feel good. And two, it helps the parents notice something right the kids are doing. Because sometimes parents are busy, they don't notice that. I don't say that second one, so tell future parents. But that's one of the reasons. The idea of understanding that we have to change our paradigm a little bit and look at what the other person is really like and look at the other person. Look at their positives. We say, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha," love others as yourself. That's what the mitzvah said, the Torah says. What do you mean, loving as yourself? We love ourselves in spite of our flaws. And if we can love others in spite of their flaws. And that's also a challenge. We have to push ourselves to love each other more. And especially, the second base of Mikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam, unwarranted hatred. So we need to push that. We need to push and say, as the great Hasidic master said, what's the restitution for sinas chinam, unwarranted hatred? It's ahavas chinam. It's loving your fellow Jew for no good reason at all. For no good reason at all. And the truth of the matter is, if you look at the people, the chesed organizations, it's not who and what and where, what we do to help. It's a very beautiful, beautiful idea. There's a secular book by a fellow named Gary Czapnick. It's called The 5 Love Languages. I recommend the book. He wrote it after meeting people who were in counseling. It's made officially for couples. I think he has one for kids as well. And basically what he found is that everybody likes many things, but there's certain things that really give us strength, that really make us feel loved fully. And if we learn each other's love language, then that would help us make other people feel more beloved. Actually, Gary Czapnick in the back of his book has a test for men and women so couples can take that to learn what their primary love language is or language is. And these are the three things: giving someone time, giving someone presence, doing acts of service for them, appropriate touch, and words of encouragement. So again, it's time, gifts, acts of service, touch, and words of encouragement. Now, obviously, some of us all of us probably like all of this to some degree, but there's certain one or two that each of us are going to be dominant in. And that's a very beautiful idea of loving your fellow man as yourself by saying, I'm not going to give that person what I love. I'm going to try and find what they like. Maybe for them a compliment means a lot. Or maybe for them if I give them a present, that means a lot. Or maybe just giving them my time, that's what means a lot. Or doing something for them, or a hug, whatever it may be. So being cognizant of trying to learn the other person's love language is a very beautiful way of doing chesed to somebody else. And many times, and this is important, many times we give what we think either we need or they want, and it's not sufficient, and we don't understand why. We don't understand why. I made this beautiful dinner for you, and you're not happy because I'm on the phone. Because maybe you didn't want to act of service, you wanted the time. I brought you this beautiful bracelet, and that's not good enough. I wanted a kind word, I wanted a compliment. So learning each other's language is a very, very powerful tool for shalom bayis, and just for learning to get along with people. Because different people, I'd rather accept all, no, I'm kidding. But the idea is learning each other's love language is a powerful tool to help each person feel special and feel loved by you. And again, it could be a way of understanding loving your fellow as yourself, you figure out what you like, and you let the other person know. And by the way, that's also true. Letting the other person know what you like is an important thing, because people can't figure this out on their own all the time. But trying to figure out what the other person is helpful as well. A very beautiful story about a man who unfortunately was in the concentration camp, and he was looking through the garbage dump to see if he could find a potato peel or something to eat. And he's looking and looking and looking. And a fellow Jew who he didn't know comes and says, "Did you find anything?" And he says, "I'm sorry, I didn't find anything for myself either." But the first Jew who's searching goes over to this fellow Yid and gives him a hug, and he says, "But remember, I love you and Hashem loves you." And when that first man passed away, the second man came to the house of the children to be Menachem Avol, to come to mourn. And none of them knew him. And they said, "Can we help you? We don't know who you are." He says, "I met your father in the camps many years ago, and he gave me something that kept me going all through the years. He gave me a hug and told me that he loves me and Hashem loves me, because he couldn't give me any food, but he wanted to give me something to hold on to. And I held on to that for all these years, and I wanted to share it with his family to let them know what your father had did for me in the concentration camp." Then there's the relationship with Hashem. We look at Hashem, he's the commander-in-chief. He's the boss, he's the general. Got to listen to what he says. We're missing something very important if we do that. And the part that we're missing is that Hashem wants a relationship with us. Imagine a couple that's getting married, and they each have their own company. And they decide that we need to develop our own personal relationship, but we have to make sure our business relationship doesn't interfere with our relationship. So they make some rules. They say, first of all, we need to appreciate each other. We need to be faithful to each other. And we can't speak disparagingly or disrespectfully. We need to give each other quality time. We need not only to respect each other, we need to respect each other's people, the people that work for the other one. We can't destroy assets. We have to be truthful, and don't be jealous of what the other one's accomplished. Sounds good? Sounds like a few good rules? These rules are really the Aseret HaDibros, the Ten Commandments. Appreciate each other is realize Hashem is the one Hashem. Be faithful. Don't have any other idols. Don't speak disparagingly. Is don't say Hashem's name in vain. Quality time. That's what Shabbos. Respect each other's people is don't murder. Honoring our fathers is respecting each other's people. Don't destroy assets is don't murder, don't kidnap. Be truthful. Don't swear falsely, and don't be jealous. Hashem wants us to have a relationship with Him, and He gave us the Ten Commandments as the foundational rules of that relationship. That's really what all Torah mitzvahs are. Because in fact, every mitzvah, every positive commandment is a step in bringing us closer to Hashem. And every mitzvah lo ta'aseh is to avoid moving away from the Almighty. So we need to be aware of these things. And we need to develop a greater connection with Hashem, and again, work on a relationship with Hashem. One of the things that help in the relationship is awareness of the goodness that Hashem does for us. Looking at our blessings. I, Baruch Hashem, have 7 children already married out of the house. One of them, my oldest, actually lives in Los Angeles. So someone came to me and said, "You must have davened really hard for that to happen." And I said, I have to be honest. I never davened for it because I never thought it could happen. It wasn't in my realm of possibility. It was totally a gift from Hashem. I have a child and grandchildren living here with us in Los Angeles. I'm very grateful for it, say it all the time. But we need to start thinking about the gratitude of the things that we didn't expect, or even that we do expect and we take for granted. We develop a relationship through tefillah, through prayer. And we develop a relationship through the study of Torah. That's Hashem's words, and that's what makes a difference. There's a very fascinating story with Rabbi Essex, who was one of the movers and shakers of the Baal Tshuva movement in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union. And you'd go to people and say, I want you to come learn with me. And they said, we don't know, we're about God, we have questions, we want to discuss. The communists have done a very good job of eradicating the thought or knowledge or awareness of God. And he said, you know what? Let's make a deal. You learn with me for 6 months, and then I'll answer any of your philosophical questions. And many of them took the bait, no problem. After 6 months, he'd come to them. You have some philosophical questions about it? I don't know. We're not having questions. We don't have time now. Let's learn. Hashem says, Halavai oisi ozli, leave me alone. Just study my Torah, and the light in it will bring you to recognize me and see me. We're learning for the right reason. The power of the words of the Torah can make us feel a real connection to Hashem. And we need to understand that Hashem gives us life. Now, my father had open heart surgery in California, and he was staying with us after the surgery. And he had ceramic valves put into his heart, because he had his valves were leaking and they needed to be replaced. One time we're sitting in this room, and I hear noise. I'm figuring one of my kids left a toy around, the battery on. I'm looking under the bed. I don't see anything. I'm hearing click, 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 click. And then I look closer to my father. I'm hearing the valves of his heart opening and closing. The ceramic valves. Hashem makes it quieter. The valves opening and closing. You could hear them as he's breathing. What we have to be grateful for, we can't even imagine. Can't even imagine. Our senses, our abilities, our talents, our directions, our purpose, our hope, our ability to love, our ability to be loved, to care. There's so much that we have to be grateful for. I mentioned the 5 love languages, and I wanted to say a theory, just a thought, that maybe the gift of Torah that Hashem gave us is really the 5 love languages as well. Bereshis, that's the gift of time. Hashem created the world and gave us time. Shemais, Exodus, is the gift of Torah. He gave us the gift. Vayikra, Leviticus, is the idea of service to Hashem, the Beis Hamikdash, the Mishkan. Bamidbar is touch. The Jewish people are counted there. Some of them were actually lifted. The Levim were lifted. And the Devarim are words of encouragement, where Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us that the relationship with Hashem is constant. Even when we're in Gullus, even when we're thrown out of the land, we still have a connection to Hashem. So maybe the Torah is really the 5 love languages that Hashem is giving us to show how much He cares and loves us. I'd like to conclude with 2 stories. One was with my father, Olav Shalom, of loving memory, when he had the open heart surgery the first time. So as he's being wheeled into the operating room, I hear him mumbling, and I say, Tati, what are you saying? And he says, I'm saying Hashem Elokim. God is the Almighty. And he's saying it over and over. I said, Tom, why are you saying that? I said, because when I was in the camps during World War II, and I was on the death march, we were dying of thirst. And I understood why Chazal, our sages, tell us that dying from thirst is one of the worst deaths, if not the worst death. And the insight I had that it was the worst death is because I didn't think about anything. I couldn't think about anything spiritual. The only thing I could think about is water. I want a drink of water. I don't care if I live. I just want a drink of water. And I decided then and there when I finally made it that hopefully at the right time I'm going to have a different thought before my death. And before he was going into surgery, he said, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the surgery, Baruch Hashem he did, but I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I want the last words that I say should be Hashem Walekim. God is my Almighty. Talking about, 50 years later, that he had that thought. He kept it in his mind, because he had a relationship with Hashem. He understood that. There's a man who lost everything in the camps. He lost his family, he lost all of his possessions, and obviously it was a terribly challenging time for him. But he said, you know what, there's one thing that I'm not going to lose that the Nazis can't take away from me. And that is my connection to Hashem. That's my connection to Hashem. And the Nazis required the inmates that weren't killed immediately to go into a vat of chemicals, supposedly to clean them and get rid of lice. And it was terribly caustic and painful. And literally people jumped in and jumped out. And this man, when he came to the realization, wait a second, I lost everything, but I still have Hashem, he walked into the vat of chemicals and felt serenity come over him. And he remained in the vat. And his friends are screaming, get out, you're going to be burned! Get out! And he was totally calm, totally comfortable, and just felt really being in Hashem's presence. And when he got out, he was not burned, he was not scalded at all, he was fine. And he felt, even in that terrible place that he was in, that he had a connection to Hashem. Tisha B'Av is here, unfortunately, again, and it's not a Yom Tov yet. It's an opportunity for us to work on our relationships with Hashem, with ourselves, and with each other. And each and every one of us can make this contribution of lighting another candle to the light of eternity that all the great people in the past generations have done. And hopefully the little extra light that we add will create the full light to be able to have final redemption soon in our days. Thank you for listening. Any questions? Okay, have a easy rest of the time.
I'd like to thank Rabbi Czapnick so much for his beautiful words of chizuk and isaros. Mirz Hashem, we should all have the zchus to learn and continue to grow from his words and from his teachings. The Chavis Chaim Heritage, first one will be in